All right. How is everybody doing tonight? Wanted to give you a little preview of what I was watching today. Hello, Dee Dee. No need to say hello with the question mark and the exclamation point. The reason I've done that, started doing that a little bit, showing like a movie before, is I realized that when I get on here, I first get on here, nobody's on here. And I think people don't start watching until they know I'm on here. Well, so I thought I'd give a little preview. And the last couple weeks, I've started out with a couple Christmas movies. I think I did Rudolph the Red-Nosed Ranger 2 weeks ago, and then last week I think it was Die Hard. And so I had Fargo in while I was doing some work today. In fact, I made a comment on Facebook today about that movie, and so I thought it'd be fitting. Fargo, one of my favorite movies, and I thought it was appropriate given how cold it has been in the United States and the snow that a lot of the northern United States has gotten over the last week. So hi, Dee Dee. Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Joey. And Dorothy, how are you doing tonight? So we're all here. Tonight I am wearing a Little League World Series shirt from Williamsport, Pennsylvania. From, what is that, 2005? Yeah, 2005. And my parents, who live in Pennsylvania, have gone there a few years. They haven't been there recently, but they went there a couple years in a row. Must have been 2004, 2005, 2006, a couple years in a row. And I thought it would be good for me to wear this shirt for once. It's a shirt that I haven't worn very often, but they were there and they got me this shirt. I've never been to the Little League World Series. Of course, when I think of Williamsport now, I think of a friend of the show, Kenneth Maines, who was most recently seen on the History Channel's show about the Zodiac Killer. So he is based in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. And so I hope everybody had a great Christmas. How was your Christmas? What did everybody get? You can type down in the comments section there what you got, anything cool for Christmas. Hi, Andrea, I see you. Diane, how are you doing tonight? And Kelly, how are you doing up there in Pennsylvania? So if you have anything cool that you want to tell me that you got for Christmas, I'd be interested to know. So far, I just got a pair of shoes for my brother, which is appropriate being that he works at a shoe store, and I got some money. It's really all I've gotten. Didn't ask for much, although I probably will be getting a big item here maybe within the next week. We're just going to have to see how that works out. Hi, Jackie and Stephanie. Did y'all happen to see, before we get into the business side of this Facebook Live show tonight, did you see that Erie, Pennsylvania got 53 inches of snow in 30 hours? That is crazy. Crazy. Just crazy amount of snow. I've seen the pictures. I'm familiar with Erie, Pennsylvania. I have friends from Erie, Pennsylvania. I went to college with people from Erie, Pennsylvania. It sets some sort of record. It's just crazy. I wonder if any of you have seen those pictures. That happened a few days ago. I think right around Christmas, like Sunday, Monday. Dorothy is saying she got a bathrobe, pajamas, and a tablet. And Stephanie got an ICE microphone thing. I'm not sure I know what that is. But good for you. I love a good bathrobe. I love a good bathrobe. So I can respect that gift. And also one more thing before we get into all of this. Did you see the Disneyland shut down today? There was a power outage. And then down here in Disney World, on Christmas Day, they actually had to shut the park because it was to capacity. I can't imagine that. I've been there when the lines have been really, really long, and I don't think that the park ever got shut down. But they got to the point where there's so many people in there that they had to shut it down, and that was on Christmas Day. I've never heard of that before. It must have been crazy. Beautiful time to go to Disney World, given the weather. but the lines this time of year can be just completely insane as well. Hello, Jill. Thank you for joining the show tonight. And Dee Dee says she got a cotton candy making machine. See, you guys get all the cool stuff. Cotton candy making machine. I love cotton candy. That is interesting. I'll be interested to hear how much you use that machine, Dee Dee. That's very interesting. I don't think I've known anybody in my life that's got one of those. Cool. And if you have any questions that you want to ask me for tonight, please type them in the comment section. I have a few that I've already gotten off the podcast group. But if any of you have any questions you want to ask me about the program, about anything in particular, I'll try to answer it before the end of the program. So we got bathroom pajamas tablet. Stephanie got a microphone thing, and Dee Dee got a cotton can making machine. Very neat. Very neat. The business stuff. Just want to remind all of you of the Patreon account. Have had a couple new Patreon supporters within the last week. So you can go to patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. You can get in for $2 a month. You will get access to the blog that I write for every episode, and then you also get a free ebook that I will email to you with a note inside it for $2 a month. PayPal account, and the PayPal account is unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. Some people have used that as well. I'll leave it up to you. You can find that at your convenience. The books where did I put it? Oh, 1 second. Of course, we got volume number 1, and actually the reason I had to get up and get this is because I was looking at it as I was designing the cover for volume 3, which I was working on last night, the cover for it, so I had it over at my other desk. So you can check that out, available on Amazon.com, as is the ebook. This is $10.99. If you'd like a copy directly from me with my signature or a message inside, you can contact me privately, and I can send it to you that way. So there's that. And the ebook, of course, the same way you can get it on Amazon, or I can email you it through with a special note inside as well. And then finally, the playing cards. Where are those? We got those right there. And you can find this all if you go to Unfound. If you want an easy way to do all this, just go to unfoundpodcast.com and click the merchandise button, which will take you directly to the links for all of these things. So please check that out. Joey says that she got ceramic cast iron cooking pot. You know, it's funny. I was over at my brother's on Monday for Christmas, and his wife's daughter got a skillet or something like that was cast iron. It was huge, and it was heavy. So I joked to her that she could probably use it as a weapon. So ceramic cast iron cooking pot. It sounds awesome. I'm sure you're going to make a lot of food out of that, great food out of that, but I bet it's very heavy as well. Just a prediction. Diane, you have a question. I'm going to answer that in a second, okay? And the other Diane Rice, former guest, Patty Action's sister, thank you for joining the program tonight. I hope you're doing well, Diane, here in the Tampa area. Thank you for joining. Dee Dee, wish she could contribute on credit card and student loan poor. Totally understand, Dee Dee. Don't worry about it. It's fine. It's fine. Diane asked me, what is one of your favorite memories from 2017? Wow. What is one of your favorite memories from 2017? There was some good ones. You know, I played some pretty good disc golf at the beginning of this year, and then I kind of fell off because I wasn't practicing enough. But in April and May, I was really happy with the way I played at some disc golf tournaments that I played, and then I fell apart in the next couple. But Kind of April into May, I was playing some good disc golf, so that was a pleasant memory. Played well on some courses that have beat me up in the past, so that was nice. One of my other nice memories from just recently, to be honest, was, and it's a pretty big deal, is the new business relationship I have with TribLive.com, Trib Total Media out of Pittsburgh. And when they asked me if I would be interested in having my podcast on their site, that is certainly a great memory from 2017. It's a big deal for a lot of different reasons. And another good memory was Unfound getting mentioned on the Generation Y podcast. That was a big deal for the program. I definitely noticed a bump up in downloads and listeners, and those listeners have continued with the show since, and that happened in June. That was a very nice thing that Justin and Aaron did at Generation Y that I can't thank them enough for. So that's a nice memory too, because it really helped the program out. I think overall for 2017, probably the most positive thing that has happened is my mother, who had a lot of health problems in 2016, did really well in 2017. Finally got all our medication and everything sorted out. And she's been back to her old self, I think, this whole year. And that's probably the greatest thing for 2017, that Loretta Densel, my mother, is back to her old self and doing all the things she likes to do. And she's in pretty good health this whole year. So that's been probably the biggest positive in 2017. Becca, hi to you. Thanks for joining us tonight. Kara, happy Wednesday to you. And Taylor, thank you for joining us tonight. So we got the business stuff, Patreon, PayPal, the books, the playing cards out of the way. You're also going to hear an announcement on Friday's program that I'm going to start working on the T-shirts for Unfound. I'm going to have finally some time to work on that. So I will let you know as far as those go. Well, I think those will be popular. And Barb, welcome tonight. Thank you for joining us. Some news. Mike Williams. This is an update from last week. Mike Williams, which is a disappearance that happened here in Florida back in 2000. He allegedly went fishing and disappeared, but the belief the whole time has been that a friend of his, a guy who ended up marrying Mike's wife, had something to do with it. Last week I talked to you about this, and this is a disappearance that was featured on the show Disappeared. His remains were finally found, if you didn't know. And they were found at the end of a dead-end road in Leon County, Leon County. And they were found about 50 miles from the lake. And the reports are that it was fairly obvious that he was murdered. So I'm going to take that to mean that he was shot. I'm going to guess that there were one bullet, if not more bullet wounds on his body, maybe probably to the skull, to the head. But he was found nowhere near the lake. This coincides with his friend, the guy who ended up marrying Mike's wife, going to jail for 20 years for doing some things to Mike's wife. And we're still not I don't think anybody, the public at least, is still yet sure how that all went down, how they ended up finding. I'm guessing he made some sort of bargain. I don't know. And I think that probably Mike's wife still has to be investigated as to how much she knew. It'll be interesting to see if any charges are brought against her. But Mike Williams' remains were found. You can look this up. They were found about 50 miles from the lake where he allegedly disappeared. We now know that he was probably nowhere near that. It was all a conspiracy. It was all contrived. So there you go. Nan says she made it. Yeah. Nan, thank you for joining tonight. Thank you. And Taylor says, yes, so sad about Mike. Becca says the same thing. Yeah. That's one of those cases, though, where you kind of knew what happened, but you couldn't prove it. And it wasn't really until Mike's friend revealed who he really was and the kind of marriage that he had to Mike's wife to really deduce that, that was the case. And it should be known that Mike's friend is also the person who sold Mike his life insurance policy. So that case, I guess, has been brought to a conclusion. And I saw a statement from Mike's mother who was saying that she's not happy about it at all. She was hoping that Mike was still alive out there somewhere. So there's that. Yeah, Kara, most cases are like that. Yeah. And Allison, thank you for joining tonight. Allison, how are you doing? And so that's one of the news items that I wanted to cover. That's an update from last week, and I urge you to find that case for yourself and read all about it. Maybe you could even go back and watch the Disappeared episode. Another question. This is a question that I got offline. I got it before the show started. Jeremiah, he asked me, what case do I keep coming back to? And he left it open to whether it's a case that Unfound is covered or a case that Unfound hasn't covered. I guess it depends what you mean by coming back to. I think that there's a case that I'm always going to come back to, although I don't think there's been any movement on it in quite a while. And it was a case I covered on the other show that I used to do before Unfound started. That's the disappearance of Jody Huisentrude. I think that's a case that I'm always going to come back to. I don't think it's a case that I'll be covering on Unfound simply because I've already covered it once again on another program. And I've already talked about it kind of when Carolyn Lowe, who is a person who's followed the case from the beginning, was on the program back. I'm going to guess she was on Unfound in May, maybe. So I think Jody Huisentrude's case is the one that I keep coming back to that hasn't been covered on Unfound. As far as cases within the Unfound environment, there are many that I go back to, simply because I keep in touch with many of the guests who have been on the program. I mean, Joyce Rivatuso called me. Since last week, Joyce Rivatuso called me. And, of course, I just saw her at Florida's Missing Children's Day. She called me. So I'm talking to former guests all the time. And so I feel like when I talk to them, it's kind of going back to the case. We talk about the case again. We brainstorm ideas. There are plenty of cases in the Unfound environment, the atmosphere, that I've covered that I go back to. But Jody Huisentrude is one that I go back to that has not been done on Unfound. And there are probably a couple others, but that's the first one that came to mind. And Allison says, yes, that case is very interesting and scary. It is, Allison, because it's pretty clear that whoever did whatever to Jody was sat out in front of her apartment for a while. Yeah. That makes that disappearance particularly scary. Nan says, Jody case reminded me of Jennifer Kessie case. I suppose. And Jackie, Brandon Lawson is one that's so mysterious. Not sure you've talked about it on here. So bizarre. No, we've not talked about it. And really, I don't have any plans to cover it at this time. But Brandon Lawson is the one where, is that in Oklahoma or Texas, where his truck ran out of gas and he made a call to 911, right? I think that's the case. I have to tell you, I don't believe that anybody else was out here with him on that road. I know all sorts of different theories out there, but I really don't believe that he was out there with anybody. Not that I know any more about the case than anybody else. I do not. But I've listened to the recording. I've read about it just like all of you have. And I think he just, there might be some mental issues that play a part in that disappearance. Just my opinion. Joyce sent me a friend's request. Did she, DD? Well, you should accept it. Joyce is a fabulous person. Becca says, I go back to the case I did on the other program about Ben McDaniel disappearing while scuba diving. I haven't gone back to that one, but that's the one where pretty much it's all up in the air. Anything is possible, Becca. I agree. And Jackie says, yes, I was right about Brandon Lawson, Texas. Okay, great. Just shows you it's a well-known case. that I know probably. Hey, if Brandon Lawson's family wants to talk to me, of course I talk to anybody. If I can help them in some way, I will try to do that. I just, have a particular opinion about it at this point. But if they were to friend me or send me a message on Facebook or email me, call me, I'm going to talk to them. I will do that. So let's get to another news item. And that is, did you hear this story? And I want you to know, first of all, before I get into this, that it has a happy ending. In Danbury, Connecticut, there was an autistic man who went missing in the woods. And so they brought out the dogs, and I thought that talking about this situation, this news item was relevant because we did talk about dogs last Friday during Tyler Stice's case. And I thought it was good to talk about this because they sent these dogs into these woods, this forest, to try to find him. They sent out, I guess, multiple dogs, and one of the dogs got lost. One of the dogs did not come back. All the other ones did. One particular bloodhound did not. And I've never heard of that before. I've never heard a situation where dogs were used to track somebody down and one of the dogs got lost or didn't come back. Of course, we all have heard about dogs, regular house dogs, getting out, not coming back, maybe being found like years later. But I've never heard about a tracking dog that got lost. And it just goes to show that a point I made in the Tyler Stice episode that you never know what's going through their heads. You just don't know. In any case, I'll have you know that the dog has been found. I don't know how long. I think it might have been out on its own for like a day or something like that. But the dog was found, and it came back, and everything is okay. And in fact, the autistic man who went missing, he was found as well. So everything in the end was a happy ending. But I thought that I wanted to talk about that because I've never heard about a bloodhound or something going missing, like going out there into the woods and then not coming back. I've never heard of that before, so I wanted to tell you about it. If you could, any questions for me, please type them in the comments section. And I'm also asking what everybody got for Christmas. Anything unusual? I know that somebody's already said that they got a cotton candy making machine, which I think is fantastic. So anybody have anything interesting that they got for Christmas? Or maybe you bought, hey, how about this? How about a present that you got for somebody that you thought was pretty cool? That would be good. For me, some of you already know that when it comes to music, I'm an Iron Maiden fan. They have their own kind of beer, their own brand of beer that is brewed in England and imported to the United States. It's made by Robinson Brewery, and they have their own beer. It's called Trooper. I actually have two different kinds, but one of them is called Trooper. And I got my brother and his wife 2 4-packs in cans of Trooper beer from Iron Maiden, which I thought was a pretty cool gift. They're into imported beer and trying different kind of beer out. So that's what I got for them. Stephanie says you have Iron Maiden beer too. Is it any good? All of you should know I don't drink. I don't drink alcohol. I've never gotten into it. I've never been drunk. I've never had a buzz. I was always the designated driver in a college, and yes, I guess I was a little bit of a goody two-shoes. So what's it like, Stephanie? I'd like to hear, Stephanie, if you've tried Iron Maiden beer, I'd love to hear what it's like. I'd love to hear what you thought of it. I've been told it's a little fruity. That's what I heard that somewhere. I'll be interested to hear. I don't think my brother and his wife have tried it yet, but you have Iron Maiden beer too. That's awesome, Stephanie. That's definitely special. Yeah. Oh, your husband drinks it. Down. Okay, Andrea. I love that. I don't drink either. Andrea says I don't even drink either. Hey, there's us out there, right? I guess when you get into rock and roll, Gene Simmons from Kiss, he doesn't drink. Ted Nugent, he stays away from alcohol and all that stuff as well. There's more teetotalers out there, I guess, than we realize. I just haven't known very many. In the circles that I've run in my life, I've pretty much been the only person who didn't drink. So, and just never got into it. It's not a religious thing or anything like that. Just never got into it. Wine, anything. It's just, I just never got into it. I'm a water, chocolate, milk, Crystal Light, iced tea type of guy. And once in a while, a soda like ginger ale. So there you go. Jackie, I know you're here. Jackie, I see you. You had asked me a question before the show started, and I told you I was going to answer it. Would I ever have a guest on a live show? It would totally be up to them. I have nothing against that, but given the circumstances and the way these interviews come together, they would have to approve it. And because as you can understand that these interviews can be emotional. And I don't know if that would be the ethical thing to do, to put on a live show with something like that. I just don't know. Now, if it's a different kind of guest, like a reporter, a blogger like I've had, like I mentioned Kenneth Maines before, or Carolyn Lowe, or somebody like that, then doing something live would probably be pretty good. And I will think about that for 2018. I have certainly nothing against that in that context. But doing these interviews is tough enough as it is. And on top of that, when I record them like I do, if I tell somebody, well, can we do this live? They're going to get more nervous. The advantage you have when you record these interviews is that we're allowed to make mistakes. I tell that to every guest before we start, that if you want to rephrase something or anything, it's no big deal. I can handle it in the editing process. You do something live, then whatever you say is what gets out there. And so I have nothing against doing a show live, but it would probably not be with a family member and what all of you have come to expect from Unfound. However, if some guest who is a family member ever brings that up to me, then of course I will think about it. But I can never make any guarantees as far as family guests, because the interviews are difficult and we want to get it right. And it's tough getting things right doing them live. Having worked in live entertainment in Las Vegas, even then we're doing the same show over and over and over. Mistakes happen. They just do, because we're all human. Andrea says, live would be hard with sensitive info. It would be. It just would be. And I don't want to put any of my guests on the spot. Truthfully, I don't really edit that much out of the interviews anyway. Usually the interviews pretty much go the way you hear them. But if there is any sensitive things, if people need to take a moment or something like that for a minute, which happened recently, then that gets edited out. It just does. And so that's not something that could be done on a live show. And I think live adds a whole new level of stress to doing it. And I need the guest to be as comfortable as possible. For me personally, doing live stuff is no problem. But the guest is always my concern. That's always going to be the number one concern. Linda says Dawn would be a good guest as an update guest. She wants to come on. Yes, if we have something to update, yes. But in talking to her last night, all I can say is I'm not sure we have an update. All right. Some things happened. We talked them over. I talked to her for about a half hour. And I'm not really sure we have any update material yet. But Dawn will certainly be the final decider on that. Stan, welcome tonight. How are you doing, Stan? I hope you're doing well. Thank you for joining us tonight. Jackie says, I was just thinking it puts a face to the person. Sure it does. Absolutely. And more like a plea to the public. I agree, but I'd like to think that Unfound is more than just, a kind of a public service announcement. This is an interview show where we go through all the facts, and sometimes putting people on the spot with facts and everything, they forget things. And, that's, the way Unfound is done is that we want to get as much information out as possible because I want the listeners to know as much as possible. And so if they know anything or they want to do their own research into it, they could do that. And I need, first of all, you have to realize that live entertainment is very rare. Yes, for example, even go back to Johnny Carson days, they have a live audience, but when you watch it on TV, it's taped. You're watching a tape, so they can take things out that don't quite go right. So there's that to consider. But Jackie, it's a very good question. I'm not saying I haven't thought about it, but it'd probably take a certain type of guest for that to happen. One more news item, and then I'll take any more questions that you might have, and I appreciate some of the questions that have been submitted. It's interesting when I'm looking for a couple news items to talk about for this live show. What I do is a Google search. Just anything that really pops out to me is like being something out of the ordinary, like the dog story. A month ago, maybe it was that Argentine submarine, which still to this day hasn't been found. I look for cases like that, whether it's in the United States or wherever. And, in going through and Googling anything that's happened regarding missing persons in the last week, you start to realize how hard it is for police. And hello, Shauna. Thank you for joining. Rachel, good to see you tonight as well. That you do a Google search for missing persons news in the last week. You find, for example, somebody who went missing, and then a couple days later, they were found. You find several stories like that. And in doing that, you begin to realize how tough it can be for the police to investigate these missing persons cases, because even in my small Googling that I do every week in preparation for this program, how many stories I find like that where somebody goes missing and they're found a couple days later, usually on their own. It's not the police that's found them or some stranger. The person ends up coming home. Maybe it's a teenager or an older person or somebody, or maybe somebody with dementia. I see a lot of stories like that. A person who ends up wandering back to their house or to a living facility or something like that. You begin to realize how tough it is for police to try to determine, well, who are the people who are really disappeared and probably not coming back, and the ones who are eventually going to come back within the next couple days. It's almost an impossible task to do. Because I can tell you on a weekly basis that I'll find a couple stories maybe that I want to mention on this program, and then I look further down the list and, oh, that person was found. So that must be what it's like for the police. I'm not giving them I don't want to give them too much of an out here because, as you know, we're fairly critical of detectives and the investigation of disappearances. I think that's the way we've been since the beginning of Unfound. I don't want to give them too much of an out, and certainly all the guests that I've had on the program all have a right to complain. But you do see that side of it, those first few days where it could be the police don't know what to think and they get jaded over time. It was just, I just wanted to talk about that for a moment as I was something that I experience on a weekly basis, preparing for this program. Any other questions from the audience out there? Any questions? Anybody want to tell me anything that they bought for somebody for Christmas that the youth might think that was cool? Anything like that? Before I get into the next part of the program, where I'm going to be answering another question, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about this week's case. Anything at all? Okay. Becca, I know you're on here. I'm going to answer your question now. Has anybody in my family gone missing? Or, have I ever been connected to anybody who has gone missing? Anybody in my family? No. And I have a fairly large family. I have the Dempsel family, and my mother's, of course, her maiden name is Ravati. I have all that family. And then I have my biological family. Their last name is Joyce, because I was adopted. So I have a fairly large family. And the answer is no. Nobody has gone missing. Nobody's been murdered. Nobody's ever been accused of murder or anything like that. No. But I will tell you that a couple maybe interesting things that are kind of close to me. There was actually a murder within like a mile of my house when I was growing up. I think it happened in 1980. There was a girl, I'm going to say she was 17 or 18 at the time. I think that she maybe was a senior at Leechburg High School, the high school that I went to. She was killed, murdered by a guy, and then she was thrown down a well. And so that happened within like a mile of my house back in, I think it was about 1980. I knew this girl's younger brother who was in elementary school with me. And strangely enough, years later, when I went to work with my family in the car business, once I got out of college, I actually worked with the murder. The murderer got caught. The body was found. This girl, her name was Joni Johnston. She was murdered. The guy who murdered her, his last name was Sluka, S-L-U-K-A, and he went to jail. I don't know if he's still alive. I don't know. But I ended up working with the murderer's son at the dealership that my family owned in the early to mid 90s, from 93 to 1998. He was a wash boy, kind of a detailer at the dealership. And he was a good kid. I got along. His name also happened to be Ed, and I got along with him real well. I got along with him. And then I moved to Las Vegas, and sometime later, this kid committed suicide. So the son of the murderer of this Joni Johnston, he ended up committing suicide. Very sad story. Very sad. So that was kind of a true crime story that was very close to where I lived. Murders are not common where I grew up. The other story maybe that's kind of close to me, a missing persons case, is, and I think I wrote about this in the group, if you remember, and this case is not resolved, and I have to talk to my brother about it. A guy who my brother worked with, who was another shoe salesman. My brother Brian is a shoe salesman here in the Tampa area. This guy that he worked with, who was wasn't from Russia, but he was from like the Ukraine, not the Ukraine, someplace like that. He up and disappeared. I think I wrote about that in the group. I'm guessing that happened this past summer, and my brother has not been able to get any new information for me regarding that. So guy just kind of disappeared. They don't know what happened to him. If I should do that. I'm gonna talk to my brother about that case again, see if he has any more information, and I will fill all of you in the group when I get that more information. So that's a missing persons case that has happened very close to me. It's believed that he fled the United States for some reason, but we don't know what the reason is. Messing around with my eyebrows on that one. They believe that he flew back to Europe and then back to his home country for some reason. I'll have to get more information on that, just to be honest. So that's as close as true crime cases have gotten to me. Nan is saying Nora, N-O-R-A. Why did you write that, Nan? What is that supposed to mean? Nora! Exclamation point 5 times. Please, Nan, please expound on that so I know what you're talking about. Becca, good. I'm glad no one in your family is missing. That's scary that you had a murder happen so close to your house. Yeah, and that you knew her brother. That's a crazy story. Yeah, it was a big deal at the time. It was a really big deal. And probably a little further, there was a crime spree, a murder spree that happened further away from me, about 20 minutes away from me. It was called the Kill for Thrill trial. It also happened in the late 70s, early 80s. Travaglia and Lesko were the guys' names. They killed a police officer. They killed a few people before they were caught. In fact, one of the guys just died in prison recently. Travaglia and Lesko. You can look that up. Just type in Pennsylvania, Travaglia and Lesko. And I think that my dad actually taught one of those guys in school in junior high. So that's another case, I guess, that's kind of close to me as well, 70s into early 80s. But, yeah, they killed a police officer, and it was in the Vandergrift, Apollo, like Westmoreland County area where this happened. So I'd urge you all to look that up as well. Something that's probably not known nationally, but was certainly known in Western Pennsylvania. And when they went to trial, it was called the Kill for Thrill trial because these guys were just riding around killing people. So you might want to check that out as well. The disappearance, the case for this week. No two cases. By the way, how did you all enjoy two cases this past Friday? Bill Underhill and Tyler Stice. I thought they were two very strong cases. I thought the guests, Mary Underhill and Jessica Curtis, both sisters of those guys, did very well. Two interesting cases. Very similar in some ways, I guess, being that their age, but separated by 47 years and about 1,700 miles. But two guys, 20 years old, just kind of disappeared. And we'll see what we can do to help those people out as the weeks and months pass. We'll just have to see. So two cases, but back to one case this week. And it is the disappearance of Patricia Taylor. She disappeared from Tulsa, Oklahoma on August 31st, 1981. And the episode, the title of it, is going to be The Runaway. Because I discovered, and I'm a little, I wouldn't say, I'm a little shocked, a little surprised, excuse me, that this will be the first case which you can classify it as a runaway, where it's a young person who, isn't in any trouble or anything like that, isn't into any drug activity or anything like that, or prostitution. And then there's all signs that she disappeared. In fact, you're going to hear the episode when you hear it, that she talks about, she was living at a girls' group home in Tulsa. She was not living with her family. And she had run away a couple times before. And she was working at a Sonic. And she just told people, I'm getting on a bus. And she got on a bus, I guess, and was never seen again. And so this is going to be our first case where, and there are some other things, there's some other facts that you need to hear that will come up in the episode. But I interview her sister, I guess technically half-sister. Her name is April. And I was just kind of surprised to discover that this was the first runaway disappearance that I've covered. We've had some other young women who disappeared. Most recently, I guess, Ashley Kohler, but I don't know if she was a runaway. We now know that she was involved in some prostitution and some things we just don't know. This is more along the lines of a runaway, of a teenager who isn't happy with her living situation and wants to get out on her own. And in this case, Patricia Taylor was 15. And because of all of this, I think of all the cases that we've covered so far, even though this happened in 1981, that, she has a fairly good chance of being out there somewhere. I really believe that. And so maybe somebody will know something. She had red hair. She was 15 in 1981, so she'd be 51 now. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that this episode rings a bell of somebody, maybe very much like the Patrick Beavers case, where he kind of just up and left. But once again, I don't know if you can call him a runaway because he was an actual adult, hoping that somebody might recognize him somewhere. With her, though, being underage, goes under the definition of a runaway, not an adult, I guess. So I'll be interested to hear what all of you think about this case, because there are some other facts about it that maybe might lead you in a different direction, and you're going to get to hear about this girl and what it was like to live in this home, and how she moved around so much as a young girl and then ended up back in Oklahoma. And so we're calling this case the disappearance of Patricia Taylor. Once again, August 31st, 1981, and the guest for this episode is her half-sister, April. And I think you're going to find that April did a great job. She's very well-spoken, knows the material, she's been working on this very hard for the last 5 or 6 years and has made a lot of progress. She's really collected a lot of information, really lucky to collect as much information as she has, given that the case is 30 years old. So you're going to get to hear that. So we've gone through a little bit of news. I've answered your questions. Any more questions for me? Anybody want to talk about their Christmas? Anything like that? Any more gifts or anything like that before we get out of here for tonight? I remind you again, the Patreon account, patreon.com/Unfound Podcast, PayPal, unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. I also need to give a shout out to Trib Total Media. You can find the page at Trib Total Media, triblive.com/news/Unfound. The books at Amazon.com. The playing cards at makeplayingcards.com. You can go there and do a search for Unfound now and find them if you'd like to buy them. And if there is nothing else, it's been a pleasure talking to all of you tonight. And Nan, I'm still wondering what you mean by Nora, N-O-R-A, with all the exclamation points. I guess you'll just have to tell me offline, because I'm still not sure what that means. But with that, I'm going to conclude the program. We've made about a 50-minute show. I hope you all enjoyed it. If some of you tuned in late, you will find it on YouTube later, and I will post it. And I appreciate you joining me on December 27th, 2017. And you will hear me on Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, when we talk about the disappearance of Patricia Taylor. And good night, and hope everybody has a beautiful New Year's. Good night.